In today's episode, I'll be speaking to an expert who uses the power of past life and childhood regression, which can help find answers for your present life health experiences. Niomi Hurley is a clinical hypnotherapist and expert in past life and childhood regression. Hello and welcome to Beyond Diagnosis, a podcast to raise your awareness, decisions, and voice for alternative practices so you can take back control of your health. I'm Rita De Michele, your host, a mindset and empowerment coach, and the founder of the Onus platform. Join me each week so you can create the health of your dreams. Hello, Naomi. How are you?
Yes, fine, thank you. How are you?
Good. Now we've been having a big chat before before I hit record, and it's just incredibly interesting what you do and how you help people, and such a unique way of doing it. Like a lot of people talk about, their childhood memories, going back to their childhood, their parents and all of that. You go to a much deeper and bigger level by taking people back to their past lives. What
Yeah,
happened? What nuggets do they find there? And how that can help uh, whatever they're experiencing now, whether it's emotional, mental, physical, what the blocks are, what's stopping them, why it's been created. It's it's a godsend, really, when you have that information and know then what to do with it. So, what is past life regression or regression hypnosis?
so I started out doing the childhood regression. So
Mm,
there's a lot that our body stores, and we talk about it being stored in our subconscious. And so the hypnotherapy just allows a stronger gateway to the subconscious, right? So we can
right.
go in, explore, and bring things out. But over my time doing that, I stumbled across, I had a session and I actually went into a past life, which then created curiosity in with me. So I got curious. And my belief system is that although we call it the subconscious in this space, it's actually an element of the soul, right? So
Mm,
it's storing information, not just from this lifetime, but from any incarnation that the soul's experience is stored in there. But because it's in that lower soul, it's only giving us what we need at the time. And so sometimes those memories, although that storage is deeply locked, but it still affects how we show up, how we think, how we feel,
mm.
how we behave.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always heard this saying, you are only given as much as you can cope with at the time. So, do you see people several times to be able to unlock another little piece that's there in their soul?
If that's what they choose to do, yeah, I see them even with the childhood regression. So with the RTT that I do, most clients get good results between 1 and 3 sessions. So they will normally come to me, we'll have a session, they'll deal or process whatever they've come to me for. And then in 6 or 12 months' time, they go, now we fixed that. This little
Mm,
thing's popping up, right? Because
mm,
that's what life's about. It's about continually challenging us in that growth space. So the same happens with the past life. What information they get in that space is relevant for that circumstance at that point. So if they become curious later, then yeah, they come back and we go exploring again.
So your technique, tell us about your technique. Do you use a combination of like traditional psychology, spiritual, and energetic practices to achieve this?
Yeah, all of the above. So I really believe that my whole life brought me to this point. And so as you saw when you looked at my website, I'm
Mm,
an avid learner. So I've got, training and qualifications and experience in a whole range of things from leadership to HR to psychology, safety, anything that really was to do with people really interested me and piqued my curiosity. So
mm,
when I'm in the session, 100% I'm bringing from everything that I've ever learned. I've also done a fair bit of training around that spiritual aspect with some really talented people. So I've done some mediumship training and I've done some clairvoyant psychic training. And although that's not my strength, we still get messages sometimes that come through that I believe that I've been able to enhance in that training space as well. So yeah, it's a package. And I actually feel like when I'm in the session with someone, I feel like I'm just guiding them. It's not me at all. It's their journey. It's what
Yeah,
they do.
yeah.
But a lot of the times, the more I do it, the more I realize there's this subtleness that comes in that when I'm speaking, sometimes they're not my words, or it's not my guidance, or it's not my idea, right? It feels like it is, but subtly I can feel like it isn't. So I feel like I get a bit of help too sometimes with the work that I do.
Sounds amazing. I love that. And I think because you were saying you actually really go down to the level of the soul, and you need to incorporate. Is that what sometimes when people they go, I've had hypnotherapy, it hasn't worked, I've done this, it hasn't worked, and is that because they're not going deep enough? They're not going into the soul where we hold. That's where we actually, you were saying before about accessing the subconscious mind, but for you, like you were saying, it goes even further and deeper. It
Mm.
actually goes to the soul level.
Well, I think everyone's different. Their reasons for not getting the results they're after could be a range of things. It
Yeah.
might not, without going too high in consciousness thinking, but it might not even be their time to do that. There might be other things they need to explore as part of their bigger purpose. But I believe we all have connection to our soul.
Mm.
Anyone that's meditated and has that as a regular practice will have at least one experience where they've actually gone, whoa, right? And so that moment's happened. So it's not untouchable for people. It's just that every day, because we're just so busy in that conscious space, that's where we live, that's what we recognize. And it does take a little bit of open-mindedness to go, hey, I'm going to trust this process to really get into that deep space.
And trust is a big word, isn't it?
Mm.
Because there'll be so many people that go, what the hell are you talking about, past life? Are
Yes.
you nuts? You know,
Yes.
it's like doesn't exist. It's all, that's all woo woo. But it really, the soul does hold the answers, and when I find that sometimes when you're really searching for something or you're trying to understand why has this happened to me? Like this is a health podcast. A lot of people think, why me? Why has this happened to
Yes.
me? Why have I got this? You can't rationalize that sort of thing from a mental, emotional level. It has to come from something so deep. And that
Mm.
is the soul level, and that has answers from lifetimes ago.
Yeah.
We just keep regenerating, we keep regenerating. So when you take someone back, let's say you've got a client and they're in a hypnotic regression, could you say that?
Yeah. Yep.
What are they looking for? What are they looking for? Little nuggets in their past that may help or assist in understanding why they may be experiencing this physical or emotional mental challenge in this lifetime.
So a lot of the times, if I'm being honest, what they're looking for isn't always what they find, because what they're looking for comes from that conscious mind, right? And
Mm.
so a lot of the times people will say to me, oh, I know it's this and this and this and this is incorporated, or I've had these sessions with someone and they've told me this happened in a past life and that's creating this. And I obviously give them space, but 99.9% of the time, it's not to do with that, because if we're already aware of it, then why isn't it fixed, right? So there's something usually
Yeah.
that's we're unaware of. And I think when you were saying, the people's perceptions around it, 10 years ago, 10 or 5 years ago, if someone had told me they did past life regressions, I would think they were crazy. So I get it, right? I've spent most of my career in my logical mind
Yeah.
in that conscious space. So it was even hard for me to accept. And I was encouraged by so many events happening around me that really pushed me into this space. And I resisted it because I didn't want people to think I was crazy, until I actually did a lot more work on myself, that it was actually like, well, it's not really up to you on what you think, because this is what you're meant to do, right? So you just got to
Mm.
show up and just do it. But when people go back into it, sometimes the childhood, but definitely when they go into the past life and even the soul interlife space, I can elaborate that on in a minute. But it's they just get this knowingness and this understanding. So it's not always what they're looking for, it's what they, because it's at a higher level of consciousness that they're exploring this as well. So it's just kind of like, I call it a divine download for lack of a better word, but it's like they just get this divine download that just goes, it's like an epiphany in that space. And when I see that, that's when shifts happen, right? Because when you have that epiphany, that changes the emotion, thought, and physical connection to the stuff that's been stored there.
Excellent, excellent explanation of that. And can someone actually pinpoint something and say, because this happened to me in a past life, like that is why it's expressed in this present life?
Yes, they can if they're meant to. And that's a whole nother podcast, right? To go into that
I
space of,
understand that though. That's a
yeah,
bit like you don't
yeah,
necessarily get what you want, you get what you need.
yeah, 100%. And I tell people that
Yeah.
up front.
Yeah.
So even before I even do a session with someone, I actually have either a phone call or a Zoom call with them just to make sure we connect, because there is an energy component. And if they don't like me, then they're not going to trust me. We're not going to have a great session. If I don't connect with them, then I'm not going to be able to connect in the session as well. So that's a really important first step. So then that makes it easy, because when I'm with my clients, we already have a trust relationship. We already have that connection. And when they go in and start exploring, it's exactly that. And I tell them up front, just be open minded, because you might not get what you want, but you definitely will get what you need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can understand they would be going into session, especially if you're wondering, uh, why have I got this cancer? Or why do I have such severe anxiety? And most people say, oh, it's in your past or it's in your childhood, but then you'll have other people like yourself who say, well, that could be from experiences that you had in past lives. So you can understand that real need to want to resolve that in the present life, because no one wants to have cancer or severe anxiety or whatever the
Yeah.
affliction is. So
Yeah.
sometimes if someone actually picks up in their past life a nugget that is helpful for what they're experiencing now, then what happens?
Then once any in anything, and we all know if we've done any kind of healing, once you create awareness of something, then it loses a lot of its power, right? And then you
Mm.
can consciously process at a different level. But I had one lady, for can give you a bit of an example. So she went back, she had issues with breathing and with her lung capacity and things like that. She couldn't take in a deep breath very well, and then it posed a whole heap of other health conditions. So we went in and did an explore, and she went back to a past life where she had ingested something that did feel like it burnt down her throat, and that ended up ending her life. So that was a perfect segue to take her into that in-between life space that I talk about. So in that, it's kind of like basically we all have some spirit mates, right? So they
Mm.
all hang out over there and they help us out. And it kind of takes you into a space where you're in front of them. So you can have dialogue with them. Some people have seen them present as loved ones. Had one lady seen them present as versions of her, knowing that she's actually, it's all part of her and everything's connected. So there's some really wonderful things that come through. But for this lady, she actually went there, and in the conversations, she actually got the information that even though that did happen in a past life, that actually wasn't the cause of what happened here. Um, there was nothing that actually happened. It was something she chose to create.
In
So
this past life, in
yeah,
this
so
this
in
lifetime.
this lifetime, yeah. So when she came to this lifetime, it was something she was creating. So even though she again what she wanted was the answer of, oh, was it from this life, my childhood? Was it from a past life? What happened? But the session actually showed her, no, nothing is actually contributed. This is a choice that you've made in this lifetime. due to whatever she needed to experience. So at that point, we actually explored, can she heal from that? She had some help. They did some healing. To be honest, it was the first time that it happened. I'm sitting there going, oh, is this like trying to comprehend? My conscious mind is like, this is a bit weird, but I just went with it. And at the end of the session, she just took a deep breath in. She said, that's the biggest breath that I've ever had. So she was able to heal herself in effect through the session once she got the information that was like, no, there's nothing actually that's contributed. This is the choice that you've made. And so then she had to make the choice whether she wanted to release that or not. Now, other people, definitely there's things that have happened that have created usually an emotional connection in
Mm,
the soul. And so emotions, as we know, affect thoughts, which also affect our neuro happenings, which then affect different hormones that are released and different chemicals from the brain, which then in turn can create physical ailments, right?
yeah.
So for some people it is that, but not everyone. And I think the thing I love most about this is every single person is uniquely different. They have a different
Mm.
story, they have different history, and but everyone comes out with the same messages of, you're enough and you've got this. Pretty much is the underlying messages they leave with.
And what an amazingly important message to be given,
Mm,
because uh, I think it's not hard to see how most people think that they're not enough. You just got to see, people who push themselves to achieve to their detriment and or
yeah.
anything else, or you have destructive behaviors or patterns and ways of thinking. A lot of it's based on that I'm not enough.
I
So
think, oh, sorry, I was going to say, I think everyone
yeah,
has I'm not enough issues, every single person. And even I've done a ton of work on myself. And every now and again, something will happen and I'll go, oh my goodness. And I get curious, right? I do self inquiry. I'm like, why am I feeling like this? That's brought up not enoughness. And even my conscious mind goes, that's silly. You're more than enough. But the
yeah.
subconscious jumps up and goes, but are you? Right. And then starts questioning that.
I know you go, damn it, go
Yeah.
away.
More healing. I think
More
that's
healing.
more healing to do.
Get the couch,
Yeah.
get the cushions, I'm ready.
Yeah.
And it's true, is that I like what you said. I mean, there's so much to distill here, but I really like what you said around being curious, and maybe some of the past life stuff will help you be curious. Why this, why this particular disease, ailment, whatever it is, and why now?
Mm,
I
hmm.
think, when we can ask ourselves those questions, does that help your clients, having that curiosity? Do you help them foster that curiosity around it instead of taking from a stance of victimhood, like why me? Why did I get it? What have I done wrong? I try to be a good person, all of this sort of dialogue, which is
Yeah.
kind of unhelpful, is to become a little bit more curious. Well, why this? And why now? And
Yes.
if you can't find those answers in the present, is that when you take them into their past, and that may help?
100%. And I think this is the thing that, even if people aren't into regression and hypnosis, there's still curious questions you can ask yourself that you'll get the answers at some point. And I think the regression therapy just allows that to come through more directly, and more quickly and more clearly. But I know in myself, there's times where I'm meditating and those questions come up, and then an answer will come through in an article, a conversation, something on the TV. So we've got all the answers. It's just becoming curious and asking the questions and then waiting for those answers to come through. But, I had another client that came and saw me about drinking. So he was drinking excessively. We had one session together, and he didn't want to stop drinking. He just wanted to stop making bad choices when he was drinking. So he wanted to have more control over that, which obviously meant reducing the intake. So we went through, had the session. He said, and that was a childhood regression session, RTT. Said he had great results, but he still wasn't quite there. He still felt like there was more he could do. So he came back for another session. We went to go back into the childhood regression and we weren't getting anything. And so while he's in the session, I'm like, how open-minded are you? Right? Can we try something a bit different? So we went in, he felt that there was something around his heart that was blocking him. And so we used that to go in and become curious. And he went into an in-between life space. So he didn't go into a past life. And for him, he actually had some concerns around, some instances that had happened with his mum, and that had really caused him a lot of guilt. And so he showed up and her energy was there. So he had some dialogue with her. She did some reassurance with him. But then when he came back through, and then when we came out of hypnosis, he was explaining it to me, and he said to me, I know it was her. I felt it was her, but I couldn't see her. Why didn't she present to me in a figure? Like, why couldn't I see her? And the only way I could answer that is, I don't have the answer for that. And
Mm.
so that what you needed is what you got in that space. So he was someone that didn't come in for past life. I don't know if he even had a real big belief in it, but that open-mindedness and curiosity is what allowed him to go there to have the experience.
And I suppose your clients, when they come in and you present them with this, it's dropping your guard and the expectation of what it's meant to be. Like he was saying, I didn't see her.
Yeah.
Well, that's an expectation of how we think it should be. I suppose movies and everything like that sort of, pre-frames the way that we should be thinking about that. But he heard her and felt her,
Yeah.
and that was enough to give him, you know, an insight, or did he end up changing from that, from having that
Yes.
deeper session?
Yeah, he did say so. A lot of my clients, though, when they come out, they're still processing. So
Yes.
because it's kind of a divine download, it can take a long, like they're still getting messages and parts of it ongoing for weeks or months later. So yeah, he was saying every time I checked in with him, he was like, yeah, no, I'm doing really well, but I'm still his words, I'm still processing. I'm still, this popped up the other day and that popped up. And so because it's like a really deep information sharing, not all of it can be absorbed by the conscious mind at once in some sessions.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same with a lot of therapy in a way. It can take sometimes a week, 2 weeks for
Yes.
it to all download and actually make sense for somebody.
Yeah.
Now, you used a word with him. You said he didn't go right into a past life. He went into an what was that?
It's an in-between life space. So I
Yeah,
call
can
it
you
an
just explain
interlife.
that to the audience a little bit, what you mean by that?
Well, if I'm being honest, that's where the magic happens.
Oh,
From my perspective, that's the bit that I enjoy the most. And the past lives are still interesting. For some people, that's the fun part, going in, exploring a past life, seeing what information comes through. But the real gold comes when you're in that space with just energy beings, in that when that are giving you the information. And for some, that everyone has, some have had similar, but everyone has a different experience. So some people just see balls of light. Some people don't see anything but have a knowingness. Some have seen big, huge giants, angelic beings. Some have seen loved ones. So, whatever you need to see to connect with you, that's actually going to reassure you to have trust in the information is how they present. And so, I love that part. I
mm,
also love the information that people get. And a lot of the times people think the information that they need is this big amount of wisdom that's just going to blow their minds. But sometimes it is just, the answers. And so sometimes it's just giving people permission to trust themselves. That's
mm,
transformative, right?
yes.
Sometimes it is big, huge information bursts that they get that change their life, but a lot of it is just a perspective change that they just get this inner trust. They feel comfortable, safe enough, and then that allows them to show up the way they need to show up.
Fantastic. And that is so curious. And again, this goes into what we were saying. It's not how you think or, want it to be. It's how they think that you need it to be to be
Yeah.
able to process and to be able to heal. Now, as talking about energy, like, so if somebody comes to you with, say, a major chronic illness, depression, anxiety, they may have cancer, they may have trauma. Trauma is a big
Yes.
one, a trauma, isn't
Yes.
it? So, would I be correct in saying that they are expressions of energy? So, can you take people back to their traumatic event or to their whatever it is that's causing the physical symptoms? Can you take them back and find exactly that energy? That's
Mm. Yeah, so we kind of do, because the everything that's created on a subconscious or soul level has been created to help us, right? Even though it doesn't seem really helpful at the time. So someone that has anxiety, at some point that anxiety was helpful for them. It kept them safe, kept them protected from something.
mm,
And it's just that when we grow and evolve and change, the subconscious or the soul imprints at the age level of that cognition of when that happened. So that's why you often hear like people going, oh, they go back into acting like a 15-year-old when they're triggered with something. Well, that's exactly what happens, because that subconscious then has that memory, comes out in that emotion at that same space of the way that they're
mm.
thinking, feeling, and acting. And so going back and allowing that to explore gives us an opportunity, while we're in the subconscious mind, in that same brainwave state, to then process it at the age cognition we are now. So I
Yes.
have had some, probably, I reckon 90% of my clients, when we're saying, okay, it's time to release, is that part now ready to go? Because we give it a space. We call it a part. Where is it located in your body? How does it present? Actually create something with it. And 90% say, yes, it's ready to go. And we do a process to release that. And those clients have, really great results. Some of them go, no, it's not ready to go. And then we go curious about that. Okay, why isn't it ready to go? Still feels like I need to be protected. Okay, can we give it another role? Can we give it something else to help you feel protected? Or do you just need more time to sit in this and come back for another session? And then we'll go and have a look and see what else is there. Because obviously we haven't unpacked everything. So the funny thing with trauma as well is, and I've had, I think we've all had stuff that's happened to us that's created a little bit of a trauma response. Unfortunately, some of the experienced things are a lot deeper than others. But for me, what I've kind of seen is a lot of the trauma that people experience isn't just from the event that happened. It's from the usual lack of support after the event.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because at that point is when their subconscious mind goes, oh my God, that happened to you. And there was nothing to protect you. There was nothing to keep you safe. So we need to now be hyper vigilant every time something similar comes up, because there's a risk to your safety now. There's a risk to your enoughness, and you're being protected. And so I wouldn't say that's for every person, but in my experience, the people that have come to see me, that's how it's presented. And so it's working on having, again, that trust that, okay, no, we're an adult now. We can process this different. Or in that lifetime, it was the 1800s and we didn't have the support that we do have in this lifetime. So it's actually rationalizing a little bit, but in the subconscious, to be able to then show up consciously in a different space.
That's really interesting. So, I'd like to know if someone had a traumatic event in their past life, but they haven't experienced that traumatic event in their present life, can they still express and live as if that event actually happened to them in this life?
Well, will you see, not that I've had a client like this, but you do see people, and I've heard these stories because I've done a ton of research. As you get passionate about something, right? You
Yeah,
research,
yeah.
find out, of people that, have a fear of water, but there's nothing in this lifetime that can give them a fear of water. And then they go back, and then in a past life, they've actually had experiences where they've either nearly drowned, or they've had these trauma experiences surrounding water. So there's that fear element that's stored deep within them. Similar things can happen with anxiety. People can just have this, oh, I've never been in this situation, but when I'm there, I'm really anxious. Well,
Mhm.
that's something that's been stored, that's come through. So yes, it can still present in this lifetime, but it's harder for us to recognize, because if we've been a child and we've had, you know, poor parenting, traumatic experiences, all the stuff that can happen in childhood, at least then we've got a little bit to rationalize now from the conscious mind to go, oh, it
Yeah.
was because I was bullied, or it was because I was this, or because I was that. Whereas if it's in a past life, we don't often have the ability to connect with it, which can confuse us more. Like, why
Yeah.
is this happening? It's just, there's no reason.
So it takes a lot more discovery.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, my key to everything, even the leadership work that I do, my own spiritual work, my own growth, my sessions, all curiosity. And I know you honed in and picked up that word before, but that's what it's all about. I've known people that have been very sick, with cancer, that haven't had any regression therapy, but still been able to heal themselves purely by becoming curious. What is it that I'm eating? How is it that I'm feeling? What's my environment like? That curiosity and finding those answers is really powerful. And I think the thing that sometimes we all forget is we're genetically wired to heal.
Yes.
Like, I cut my finger, and unless there's something that's going to prevent that in my mind, body, or emotions, that finger's going to heal.
Mm.
Right? We have the placebo effect. They actually test out drugs on people to see if, oh, is it your self-healing abilities, or is it the drug, right? So, and I think sometimes it's even just being reminded of that, is you have that power to heal. And, if you can tap into that and become curious, then not always can you fully heal yourself. Granted, I know that that doesn't always happen, but at least then you can actually try and have like improve the experience just that little bit, so that you're not
Yes.
in that place of suffering, like you said before, and feeling like, it's a victim space to be in.
Yeah. That's such an important point, because when you're curious, I find it transcends the ego.
Yeah.
Like the ego will keep you, I know the answer, or I've been told the answer, or I've read this in a book, or I've done whatever, and it keeps you on that level. And so that's why some people say, well, they had cancer, they healed. I did the same personal development stuff that, seemed the same as what they did. Well, how
Yep.
come I'm not healing? And that's where you're talking about the soul level that you were talking about before. I'm trying to distill most of the stuff that you've been saying.
Yes.
And that's the soul level. The soul is always curious.
Yeah.
The
That's why we're
soul,
here, right? In the first place, because it's
exactly.
curious,
That's
right?
that's why we're here.
Yeah.
So if you feel that you have all the answers on the ego level, well, then you shut down the soul.
Yeah.
And it's really at that soul level that when people say I healed, but I went so deep, I transcended myself and everything, and I went such to a deep level, that's where the healing happens,
Yeah.
on that level. So for people listening to this who want to maybe get curious, why did I get this cancer? Why now? And or I have chronic pain or whatever. How do you help them sort of shift their thinking around their health challenge so it's not so much of a problem and filled with uncertainty, to see it more like it was an opportunity or a gift to become curious, even what's happening in their life on in this lifetime, or what happened in their past lifetime, to use that information to be able to move forward.
Well, I had one lady that I worked on. She was quite young. I worked with her mum, and so I was kind of like, she had quite a severe brain tumor, I believe. And so her mum and I were talking. I'm like, I'll try a session. And so in that session, I was in my early days, and I'm like, I can heal everyone, right? Which is not fact, but that was where my ego was. So in the session, we were talking, and we went back and we did some regression, and we tried to find out what was going on. And her aha or epiphany moment was, she actually got this information that was, you chose this. And the reason why she chose it is because she wanted to have that burden and save the rest of her family from that burden. So She didn't go really deep into that, but what I'm assuming is like we're given some options of things that need to happen or need to be experienced. And I think it was like she was like, I'll take one for the team, and chose to have that experience so that now I'm going probably a bit deep, but when we come in, we don't know what it's like to be tall if we're always short, right?
Mm.
We don't know what it's like to be overweight if we're always thin. And so every incarnation, we switch things up a little bit to come in a different space so that that curious soul can have different experiences. And so sometimes we choose to be the person that gets sick so that we can have the experience and share that with those around us so that they can experience what it's like to grieve, what it's like to care for someone, what it's like to have all of those emotions and all of those things, the fear, all of the yucky stuff that comes up is still an experience, right? It's still something we get to experience. And so others choose to come in to be the support for someone who is sick. And if you look at that element, they're both as traumatic as each other, right? Suffering and being sick, or being the parent or a loved one or a sibling, a romantic partner, or even a friend of someone that's suffering from that, you still get a really deep experience. And so I don't like to say, oh, it's meant to be and it's purposeful, because that takes out the deep element of it. But I
Mm.
do like to say that whatever you're experiencing, becoming curious about that might give you a little bit more of the answers on why it's there.
Yeah, that's deep. It really is. And it gives people a different insight and what level it really does take. Well, it's very cliche and it's very in now to say, oh, everyone can heal themselves, and healing only starts with thinking different, and it's just not.
No.
Yes, we can. And like you've said, you do help your reframe the way your clients are thinking. But that's what I'm really loving and hearing about your work, is that it just has to go so much further, and there's such greater um, insights and understandings and what we've chosen to do in this lifetime,
Mm.
as we've come through.
And usually, if someone is experiencing a chronic pain, severe anxiety, cancer, all of those sorts of things, or we have other traumatic things that happen around us, even separations, marriages breaking down, and grief and all of the things, one of the things that it naturally does is it turns us inward. Right. And so we do start exploring more of ourselves, and we do start that's how healing happens. It's not just meaning the cut on the finger, but even our emotional healing starts in that place. And so, when we first started, it was like people get the information they need, not necessarily what they want. That's what happens. People think, oh, how can I cure my cancer? Might actually get the message that no, this is actually part of the process. You may be able to heal from it. You may not be able to heal from it. So the goal is really, if we go on a conscious soul level, the goal is really, okay, what does this mean for me? What is this giving me? Becoming curious. And you mentioned before, with the ego, the beautiful thing about the ego is it will find information to back itself up. Right. So if, someone's had that same illness as me and they've recovered, then it'll find all the things that go, yes, you have to do this and this and this and this, and that'll help you recover. But every individual's different. Like, just because we both present with the same ailment, it doesn't mean that the root cause of that ailment is the same. Someone might be environmental. They might have ingested some chemicals or something that's created it. Someone else, it might be emotional, and you might be able to do that healing on an emotional level. Some, it might be toxicity in the body. So diet is what gets it for them, So again, I think we tend to put ourselves in boxes, whereas coming into our inner self is where we get the answers, because we're all individuals. We're all so different.
Mm, fantastic. Is there anything that has surprised you during the session?
There is. How weird can I go on this podcast?
Oh, you can go weird.
Go weird?
We like weird.
We like weird. Okay. So, well, now that I've set it up and primed you, it probably won't sound very weird, right? But for me at the time, it was. So I had this one gentleman that he was very logical minded, loved doing a session with him because every time something would happen, he'd go, oh, and so that would prompt me to go, oh, what's going on? Right. And it got me really curious. So some people spend a lot of time just doing their thing. I just give them space. But when someone does that, it's like invitation for me to ask a question. Anyway, so he had this one scene where he was in the water, he said, and he said, oh, I've only got one leg. I'm like, okay. And then he said, oh, but I'm swimming really fast. And so in my mind, I'm like, maybe he's like an animal, right? So I said to him, oh, are you an animal? Like, are you a dolphin? He goes, no, no, I can still physically see that I've got human. I'm like, okay. So anyway, he caught up with some dolphins and they communicated with him without words. They asked him to follow them. And then he goes, oh, and I'm like, oh, what's going on now? And then he said, I'm going up and down, keeping up with the dolphin. I'm going in and out of the water with a dolphin. So in my mind, I'm like, sounds like he might be a mermaid. I didn't ask him that question. And then I put it out of my mind and I'm like, no, mermaids aren't real, right? Couple of clients, a couple of months later, I have this other client and they've gone into this session and they're like, oh my God, I'm a mermaid. And I'm like, you're what? I go, I'm a mermaid. And in my mind, that was like, hang on, these two people have never met, have both come up as mermaids. So then that starts me becoming curious as to, is what I believe really real? Right. Like, and so if two people have done it, I have to then believe that there's something to it, right? I can't just ignore that.
Yeah.
And do I really believe mermaids are real right now? Now I'm not sure. Right? I can't say I definitely do because I've not seen one, but I can't say I don't because of those experiences. So for me, what I feel is every time I do a session, my consciousness levels up. And so I get just as much from my clients as what they get because I have to kind of meet their vibration a lot of the time to be able to ask them the right questions and be guided in the way that I am. I've had other people come back as animals. I had one client, that's that same one that was the first one, the example I spoke about. He said the next scene he went to, he goes, oh, I've got two legs now. I'm back. And I'm like, okay, how do you know that? He's like, I'm sitting on the edge of the bed. And then he's like, oh, my chest feels really heavy. I'm like, oh, is it issues with breathing, et cetera, asked him questions. Anyway, he went on to then get distracted because there was a dog there and he's like, oh, this is my dog from now. And I'm like, oh, okay. So he's got a dog that follows him in every lifetime, right? Which I thought was really cute. And then at the end of the session, he said, oh, when I said my chest was heavy, I'm like, yeah. He said, after that, I looked down, I had boobs. Right. So he physically felt the heaviness of boobs when he was in his session. And so I could go on with 100 million other stories and other examples, but every session there's at least one thing in there that challenges my way of thinking. And I think that's why I feel so honored and blessed to be able to guide people through this because it's giving me experiences that the physical world would never be able to give me.
So, oh God, that is just such a fascinating
Yeah.
story. It like, so if I'm hearing what you're saying, he saw himself as a mermaid in a past life.
Well, the first one didn't say that. He said he was human with one leg, is how he explained it. And so here's the thing, even though we're in this deep state, there's still an element of what needing to be protected, right? So and I could be completely wrong because I'm not right on everything, but my theory on that was his conscious mind wouldn't allow him to see that he's a mermaid because if it did, then it might have ruined the experience for him because he was so logical in this lifetime and
Mm.
may not have been open enough to have realized that. But he said he was still a man, but he had one, it was like he had one leg and he was swimming as fast as dolphins coming in and out of the water. So I made the assumption that he was a mermaid. But the second person the example that I showed, they actually said to me, oh, I'm a mermaid. I'm in the water and I'm swimming around with the animals and I'm communicating with them. So that was a different experience for that person. So the people that I have really weird and wonderful sessions with, the more open-minded they are, the further they go. And so I had one clairvoyant that I did a session with that actually went to another planet. Right. So when I said to her, how many lives have you had? She was like, 1,463. I don't know if that's the figure, but she just pulled a figure out. She's like, that's not possible. And so I said to her, but have they all been here on Earth? And she's like, no. I'm like, do you want to get curious? She's like, yes. So in we go. And yeah, she ended up in this space where she said everyone kind of looked like dogs, but they had physical bodies, but they weren't communicating verbally. But they all had the same mission. They were all on the same path. And so it was like and then I said, is it a different planet? She's like, yeah, it is. And so she went into a totally different experience because, and I mean, for that, I kind of do have a bit more belief because I kind of, in this big, vast universe, I can't believe that this is the only planet that supports life.
Mm,
Whether I believe what they look like and how they do and if they probe us and all that, I don't know about that. But you know, we're souls that take on an existence in a living form that could be anything, anywhere. I've had people come back as animals. I did a session with my mum and she was a walrus, and she's like, "I'm a walrus." Oh,
how
because
flattering.
yeah, yeah.
So how does going that far back to past lives, like say interplanetary, or I was an animal, or mermaid, how does knowing that, or is it the experience of that, help resolve whatever they're experiencing now?
So it's the experience that they have while they're in that form. And as I said, for some people, they don't really bring a lot in from past lives. And that's kind of just a fun experience for them. You know,
Oh, okay.
again, you get what you need, not what you want. Sometimes these people just need these experiences because that's what opens their mind up. That's what then allows them to become curious about other things. Other people have had experiences in their past lives that they've had that go, oh, that's why I do this. And so this is where I say every individual is so different. You know, I had one lady that came to me, her partner had passed from a bee sting, and she was first on the scene and wasn't able to revive. So there was a lot of stuff around trauma and guilt there and grief. And so I volunteered a session for her. I was like, hey, let's see if we can get you in and get some answers on a deep soul level. So I couldn't get her into a past life. I believe that maybe her energy, her emotions were just a bit too heavy to get her
Mm,
elevated. Then I tried to get her into a between life space. I couldn't get her there either. So then I just had her go and stand on the edge of a cliff and just did more of a meditation practice and just scream out and yell out all the pain, all the grief. And then as she was walking back through the path, I was going to walk her into a beautiful big room and try and get her in that way. So I said, oh, one of your spirit guides is walking with you. They're going to help you on this journey. Tried to get her in the room, couldn't. So in the end, I said to her, look, I think we've explored it all. Let's come out. So afterwards, she tells me when she was walking along the path, she was holding hands, swinging hands like she used to do with her husband. And she felt his energy and she looked down and it was his arm, but it kind of stopped at the shoulder. And so I'm just going on goosebumps now. So although she didn't get what she wanted, she got that comfort element of what she needed in that session. So sometimes it's not the big and bright and weird things that can give those messages. And she said she was just sitting there. She just said, I just want to keep feeling this feeling. Like I
mm,
had another lady that couldn't have kids in this lifetime. So we took her back to a lifetime with children. And she just felt the love of the children and being in that space. And so when she came out, she said that was the highlight of the session, was feeling that love. And she
mm.
just sat there and she goes, when I think of it, I can feel it now. And whether that was her gift to then move into living this lifetime, but able to tap into that feeling of love, I don't make the rules. I kind of just guide the sessions.
Oh, God, I love that, because it's all about, what is it? It can be tiny or it can be big shifts. Like, I think
Yeah.
that make that helps us to be in a space to even just move, 5 centimeters forward, or,
Yeah.
15, 20 centimeters forward. It's not like, I find when you do hypnosis, the common thinking around hypnosis, which I've even had, is I'm going in because I want to change my belief around something, or have an addiction to alcohol, food, cigarettes, whatever it is. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go and have a hypnosis session, 1, 2, 3, and it's going to be gone.
Yeah.
It's not like that though, is it? We're not with yours. It's a
Not with mine.
different. It's
Yeah.
different. We're not looking. People are not. Well, they could be, but it's not like you're going to see you, and after two hypnotic sessions or hypnosis sessions, all of a sudden you're not doing that anymore. Or you're not. You don't have anxiety anymore. You don't have depression anymore. It's not like that, is it?
Well, yes and no. So, anxiety is probably the most successful thing that I'm able to treat through this form of hypnosis. And if someone says to me, I've got anxiety, I'm fairly confident that I'm going to dramatically reduce it, or even in most cases, remove it, because anxiety is just emotions and mind, right? So that can really connect. But with the hypnosis that I do, um, it is a little bit different. People talk to me, we have conversations, we go into deep. Whereas most of the traditional forms of hypnosis is you lay there and someone just puts programming in your mind. And
Yes.
so that works for a lot of people. Um, I like to converse with people. I like to see people have their aha moments and get their insights. Some people have come to me, and I'll be honest, they've claimed they've had no results. Um, and at first, my ego was a little bit smashed, like, what did you do wrong? Until I realized that, okay, this wasn't for them. And I think that's again going back to how individual we are. Not everything's going to work for everyone. But in saying that, I've got, a very high success rate because usually I open myself up to draw in the clients that are meant to work with me. So there's probably, half of the population probably aren't going to get the results from what I do, but I don't see half the population, right? I see the right
Yeah.
people that are, yeah, potentially going to get those results.
That's a really good point. Not everyone is going to get what they think they're going to do, and it
Yeah.
doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
They may need some other form of therapy, or they may need to start with something else and then move to what you do.
Yeah.
But has
And it's just,
science, oh,
sorry if I
sorry,
could
go
just
on.
interrupt quickly, but it's just like Western medicine, right? Not everyone gets the results from chemotherapy or from this particular drug or from this particular form of treatment. So, again, because we're all individuals, that's not what we think we need that, but that's not what we need,
Yes,
So it's just again, and how do we get around that? Becoming curious.
I love it. I love curiosity.
Mm.
So has science, excuse me, has
Mm.
science debunked the myths and skepticism around, well, hypnosis or your past life regression style of hypnosis? And how do you get around people's beliefs that you could be putting, negative, implanting negative thoughts into their mind when they're under?
So, the first thing is this is why I only want to work with people that can trust me. I actually do every third Saturday of the month in my local town here. I do group hypnosis sessions, which is an opportunity for people to come and just experience what it's like to work with me before they actually book in, just so that they're 100% sure. So that kind of debunks all of the. And when you meet me, well, I hope I put off the right energy, but when you meet me, you know that I would never do that. Like that's
Mm,
even in my leadership training, when I teach people about psychology and how to influence people, I always say, you've got to use your superpowers for good, right? Like, because that's what we're here to do. So, that I can get around it that way in trying to just make them feel safe and make them feel secure in the session that they're having. How debunking the sort of the mysticism around hypnosis.
mm.
Funny you should ask that because I'm just about to embark on a PhD to
Oh,
do just that. Yeah. So
oh, really?
yeah, so I've got I'm just doing my integration units at the moment, so I should start my research project in the middle of next year, and my hope is to actually showcase more in a practical workplace setting, so I can give it some street cred, but how hypnosis can dramatically reduce gender bias. So I thought if I can come in it from that space, because gender bias is a really hot topic at the moment, and if I can link that in the hypnosis space as well, then it's going to be more readily accepted by people's conscious minds. And then once
Yes.
that happens, what do? We encourage them to get curious,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
right.
go in further and explore it deeper. So in part of that process, I've done a lot of research to start up with my lit reviews to back up what my project is. And there's a lot of research around hypnosis helping performance. So helping people to improve their archery skills and their football skills and those performance elements, not a lot in the healing or changing our belief system space. So hopefully with the work of my PhD, it might encourage others to jump in and we can get some street cred for it as well, which would be really helpful.
That would be amazing. It would be absolutely amazing to have that, because that would be on, people's mind,
Yeah.
So in saying that, to finish off,
Yes.
for anyone like our listeners who are struggling with a condition, what would you say to them to encourage them to open their mind and come and see you?
Well, firstly, I'm a big fan of asking yourself, asking the inner self on if it's the right thing to do. So I usually ask myself the two questions. So I'll go, should I go and have one of these sessions? See how the body reacts. Should I not go and have one of these sessions? See how the body reacts. And the one that you feel more connected to will give you the answer. And if you've heard this, you might already know the answer, right? Because sometimes if we connect with something, we know, we don't need to check in.
Yeah, yeah.
And if that's the case, then I say go for it. Jump in and you can book in for a discovery call on my website. If you just go to the individual services page, you can go in and have a bit more of a read about it. If you still feel like it might align with you, you can book in. And then we have a conversation and just make sure our energy matches. You get a chance to ask me any questions if you're a little bit concerned about something or unsure about how it's going to work. And if we both give the double thumbs up, then we can book in for a session.
And that's the important part. You both have to be on the same page with it. It can't
Yes.
be someone desperate for you to fix them. It doesn't work like that.
And I have had some people that have come to me and I said, you know what, I actually don't think I'm the therapist for you. Because if our energy doesn't match, then they're not going to get the maximum benefit. So, I mean, I could say, hey, I'll take your money, no problems. But part of what
You're
I like to
ethical.
do, yeah, I like to get results for people, right? Because that feeds my ego and also makes my time worthwhile. So
Yes,
it's not just even about the money. I just don't want to waste someone's time or my time because that's someone else I could be helping in that space.
yes.
So yeah,
It's a fair exchange of energy.
exactly. So if
Mm.
I feel like someone isn't the right fit, I'm very open to say, oh, look, I don't think I'm the right therapist for you. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them or anything wrong with me. It just means we don't align. And there's many people out there that they can go and see for different things. So I just direct them that way.
Before we sign off, Naomi, I just want to
Yeah.
ask, is this something that you can do online? Being, a global podcast, we've got people everywhere and they're going to look at your show notes and say, I found this really curious. I'd love to speak to her.
Yeah.
Can you do this online?
Yeah. So I do them over Zoom. The beauty of having them done over Zoom is I actually record the session. So I give the participants the audio afterwards. So that sometimes can make people feel more comfortable because they're like, oh, cool, I can check and make sure she hasn't put in, go and eat heaps of sugar or whatever the bad messaging is that they think I'm going to put in.
The
So yeah,
security.
yeah. So quit your job and go and bum around. I don't know what they think I'm going to do, but if I was doing that, I'd be sitting on a yacht sipping pina coladas, doing the podcast from there, right? So if I was that into
Exactly,
influencing
exactly.
people, I hope one day that I do get to do that is to create enough abundance for myself that I'm on a yacht sipping pina coladas, and people don't think that I've manipulated them to get there. But anyway. It's not a good example to use. But yes, in short answer, I can do them via Zoom and I've had some really great success over Zoom. We just need a good internet connection, obviously, is imperative for that. And people just set the camera up just so I can see their body, just so I can see what's going on. And then after I've recorded it, I destroy the video and I give them the audio because most of the time I've got my eyes closed. So I don't really
Oh, right. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
so they're laying there and I've got my eyes closed. So the video is not really exciting, but the audio is where it's at.
Yes. Fantastic. And to anybody who is struggling with something, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, or are just very curious, please Naomi's details will be in the show notes. Book in for a session if you feel this information has resonated with you. It has resonated with me. I think it's been excellent. Thank you, Naomi, for coming on and sharing all of that with our audience.
Thank you for having me. I loved chatting with you, and I'm glad we've connected. So yeah, we'll have to keep this friendship going as well, because I love your energy.
Same. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye. I would love to know, what was the biggest insight or aha moment you got from this interview, so you can now speak up, take action, and make informed decisions for your health. And if you like this episode, get instant access to your free ebook, Alternative Wisdom, Taking Back Control of Your Health, at life-onus.com.